Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel and to another Doctor Who episode review. Wow, 3 weeks in a row.
My
Look
God,
at us.
look at
Wow,
us.
who would have thought?
Not me.
Yes, this is the video series we've been doing for a couple of years now, where we watch episodes of Doctor Who, episodes we've seen before. So there's nothing brand new in any of these that we've missed. I mean, we might have missed something, but we've seen all the episodes. So in theory, nothing should surprise us. Um, that's not always the case, obviously, which
And
maybe this
yet,
one could be. And we have finally reached Series 6. We're in the second half of Series 6 with episode 9,
no, big
Night
time.
Terrors.
Nice.
Nice Terrors.
Ah,
Uh,
we did that.
no, they are definitely not nice terrors. I can confirm that. They are genuinely horrifying terrors. Yes, this episode sees the Doctor, Amy, and Rory on what you'd probably call a monster of the week story. Your bog standard. There's an alien. There's a threat. We need to solve it. No major ties to the series arc. No major ties to the wider Doctor Who
Major
universe.
toes.
Just a general episode.
General episode.
And yeah, I think this was good. They turn up on a council estate, I guess, or estate of flats. I don't know what you call them. Housing estate. There we go. And
Oh yeah, because that guy's the landlord, isn't it? So it won't be council.
no, exactly. That's what I was thinking. But yeah, he turns up. They've got to find the kid, who's very scared, and then terrors ensue, literally.
At night.
At night. Stopping monsters at night. So what did you think of the episode? I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I surprisingly enjoyed it.
Night terrors, more like night terrific. Am I right?
Nice. You've been thinking of that all day.
I thought of it when we started recording, and I was like, I need to remember to say it. I've been going over it again and again. But yeah. To quote what the kids would say nowadays, I was shook. I thought this was a Vampires of Venice situation for me. I remembered it being like, it's an okay episode, sure, and then I ended up really, really liking it. Yeah, this was a huge surprise, and I absolutely adored it. I was, yeah, shaken to my core at just how much, because I really like the arc overall of Series 6 and everything, so I like episodes that tie into that for the most part. And the fact that it's going to be like a run of the mill, and I know I really, really like next week's episode. Should we do it next week? And I was like, I just want to get to that one. I guess having that frame of mind about it is maybe why this was such a pleasant surprise to me. Combined with it's been a while since I've seen it anyway. But yeah, this was a delight. Surprisingly funny, but very much balanced out with how creepy and scary it got in the second half. Really great kind of through line with the message it was going for. Again, I think it helps, as a lot of these strong one-off episodes do. There's not that many supporting characters in it, so they have plenty of time to kind of develop them, which we can talk about, I guess, when we get to our positives and negatives later. But yeah, this was a real surprise. This is probably the most an episode has surprised me in terms of my feelings regarding it since Vampires of Venice last series. So yeah, a huge delight, and I might actually revisit this one a lot more often now, because it was just a really easy watch. I think all the actors were great in it. The characters all had some really cool moments. I thought Amy and Rob were going to have a lot less to do than they actually ended up doing. I think they had a lot of more screen time than I remembered. So I wasn't even too upset about that. And I think what happens with them and what they do is actually kind of crucial to the end sequence being as effective as it is. So I really, really enjoyed it. A very pleasant surprise. But I'm happy when episodes surprise me in this way.
Yes, it's much better when they're better than we think they're going to be, rather than the reverse, which has happened a couple of times. Yeah, I'm very much in the same boat in that. Yeah, I didn't expect this much. I was kind of going into it like, oh, it'll be fine. I'm not expecting much from the characters. I don't remember much of it. It's not. I've not revisited it for a while. It's probably not going to be the best. And I was wrong. So I'm happy to admit that. It completely took me by surprise. And maybe it is because we haven't seen it in so long.
I also think this low key might be one of 11's best episodes. I was really surprised by that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's great. I think it is very good, and again, maybe that is because we think it's better than it is, because we're so surprised with, maybe the expectations and all that has changed the levels a little bit. But I think this is definitely one of the better episodes of Series 6, surprisingly. Outside of the major story stuff, it probably is the best episode of the series. Outside of like maybe the 2-part. I suppose you've got I forget that's in this series.
But out of like the more standalone ones.
Yes.
With Doctor's Wife obviously being the main exception, but that is my favorite episode ever. So that's hard. This definitely is, I think, far and away the standout.
Yeah, and I'm happy to admit that. As per usual, we normally have 3 positives and 3 negatives. I think I went first last week, so I think it's your turn this time.
Oh God. Okay.
So what's your first positive?
My first positive. I so nearly put Matt Smith again. I won't lie to you, but I also it is just a good episode in itself, so I didn't really need to rely on that. But I've actually gone for Daniel Mays as
okay.
Alex. This was actually written with him in mind, this character, and they asked him actually to do it. He didn't have to audition for it. I think that shows, because this is all of his strengths as an actor. If you haven't seen Ashes to Ashes, watch him in that, because he's fucking amazing in that. And yeah, he's just a really swell guy, likable guy, has his fair share of problems, obviously.
He's trying his best.
He's trying his best.
Yeah, literally.
It's not necessarily a case of neglect, because how was he to know that it was an alien?
Yeah, exactly.
At the end of the day, it's not like it actually was just a troubled child or anything like that.
He didn't have the 9 months to prepare for the child. It's not as if he
wasn't
preparing
actively
for
abusing this child with neglect.
No.
And yeah, I just thought he was, I think he's kind of an everyman, I guess, in a way. And sometimes those characters can be especially boring, especially in a show like Doctor Who, when we have very outlandish characters and monsters and villains and stuff. But this is a very, I guess, everyday story about family at the end of it, even if you remove the aliens and the monsters and all of that. It is a story about family. And I think, having a character like that works so well. And an actor who is as capable as Daniel is playing that character, you do really kind of root for him and like him. And I think he bounces off Matt Smith incredibly well, as is often the case with Matt Smith and some one-off guest stars. They have a really great rapport, I think, throughout the episode. And he has his funny moments in it. He also really sells, the kind of emotional beats right at the end as well. He kind of accepts George as his son and everything. And then doesn't tell his wife the truth when she comes home. But, that's probably for the best, I guess. They probably got divorced a year later, but never mind. But yeah, I thought he was, a really fantastic performance from him. And I think it does take a lot of skill to bring a character who on paper we've all seen before, and is kind of a very generic character, even in terms of like Doctor Who guest characters, to make them someone you can root for, and someone who had more screen time than Eamon Roy in this episode, and I think he absolutely held his own and really carried it. And I was happy to see him get that much screen time. I think that deserves some praise. So I really enjoyed his performance.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and that kind of ties into my third positive, which I'll talk about now. Is just sort of the arc that both he and George go on. I think he learns to just sort of put more faith in George, I guess, and to be more like accepting of him and whatever he is. And George also has the whole arc of I need to be more accepting of things and adapt to my situations. I think they both learn the message of they're a bit different to each other. Obviously, one's an alien, but that they still can adapt and still have that relationship, that father-son relationship. And that ultimately is the message of the whole episode, is that your son might not be who you thought they would be, but that's not a reason why you should neglect them, treat them differently or whatever. Attach whatever differences you want to the son, but all of them apply to it.
Have you tried not being an alien, son?
Yeah, exactly. Was it something I did I turn you into an alien? But I think it's a good message, and it's done very well in a show that's for families, that the kids can get a message out of it and the adults can get the message out of it. It plays to both audiences. And I think that both it's well, I mean, Alex's character especially does the heavy lifting in terms of the acting work, which is fair enough because he is the guest star, he is a professional actor or whatever. But George, the kid that plays George, wasn't as bad as I remember him being.
No, I actually thought he was pretty good.
Right.
I think
shocked.
Back in 2011, I think we were just assholes. Even more of an asshole than we are now.
Maybe, and I mean,
but yeah. Also timely given everything with the Razzies this week, and then nominating like a 12-year-old girl and like saying how shit she was. You know, I kind of also had that in mind. And I was like, yeah, that's a terrible thing to do. Obviously, we don't hold an award ceremony and nomination for child actor. He probably is like in his 20s now, which is disgusting to think about. But yeah, I really remember being like, but yeah, he's actually really good.
I do wonder how much of the performance is supposed to be because he has the issues he has. Because at the end, he's not like that. He's a bit more childlike, so I think it's a bit of both, and maybe it's just really good acting that he's done that makes.
And I also think, I think there's a lot of like autistic qualities to his performance. You know, when he, you know, the fact that he needs those rituals and stuff. I think it kind of leans into that, and I
which goes back to him.
When this first aired, I probably had no clue what that was. I was like, "What's he doing? Like, that's terrible." But I think in terms of someone with autism, I think it's actually a pretty good performance and a pretty kind of solid performance. If that's what they're going for, it might have been something the director said. It might just be something he brought to it. But I think that really worked actually.
I mean, that's another thing that you could say, that maybe that's the differences, the issues they're having, that, you know, it's showing a parent that struggles with this child that has special needs and doesn't know how to handle it. But the way you handle it is you don't try and block it off and pretend it's not there. You embrace it and you try and help them with it, which is another thing you can attach to George's issues that he has in this episode, and Alex's struggles to help him with that. And I think the whole, you know, it works very well. It's a very wholesome message. It's a very wholesome story, and it's put right in the middle of a sci-fi horror show.
And when great. I think the main arc of this whole series is about how River is related to like our main trio and that whole kind of found family that they have. I do like that they kind of have a single episode kind of separate from that, but still very much in keeping with what Series 6 is trying to be about.
Yeah, definitely. So I think this is the first time that we've been like, this message is great, and we really honed in on the actual message of an episode, which is great. You know, I'm very glad when sci-fi and shows can put in a message that people will absorb whether they realize it or not, which I think a lot of people did with this one.
That's why it's one of the best genres, I think, because it really can do anything like that.
Yes, 100%. So that's sort of my third positive that I've spoken about. But what's your second one?
My second is the Peg Dolls.
Same. That was my
creepy fucking things. My God, they are awful.
When they appear in the background.
When you first sit and it's like the shadow in the background just walk. Like even before you see them, oh God, and like you know what they look like, but it's still like they are awful. And when when he like, what are you doing, man?
Opens the door and taps and then walks away, and then it moves and watches them. I'm like, oh, they're
I mean, just as an extra note, because it's an extra positive. Like, I thought the directing in this episode was amazing. I'll talk about that in my extras. But yeah, just the whole presence around them, the build up to them. You know, very sparingly used, but I think very effective. Getting actual kids to do the voices. One of which is the son of a very famous man, as we will find out when I get to some fun facts later on.
Very nice.
But everything about them is great. The scene where that guy transforms into one is fucking gross.
Horrible.
Absolutely horrible. When he like looks at his hand and it's all like,
can see where the budget went for this episode. It's in that transformation.
Imagine if this had been in part one, that probably would have looked really, really bad. But that whole scene was disgusting, and like the hair growing out. Just I was like, is this going to hold up? But I thought that bit in particular, I thought really did, and it was horrifying. So a
when
really
the hat comes out of Amy's head at the end, like the hair comes down.
It's so bizarre and grotesque, but really works. So I've always found them to be very creepy right from the first Series 6 trailer, and I think they still live up to that even. I like that they're kind of sparing the youth, because I guess there's not really much more to them than they could have done anyway. So, you know, if you're just going to have them there all the time, they're probably going to
they're just something for someone to run away from and to add an element of danger in the doll's house.
They're tying into like the theme of childhood and stuff, because they are horrible, disgusting, evil toys that people are afraid of, and they should be afraid of dolls that look like that. And yeah, they're really cool. I really enjoy them as a one-off villain. Surprising Doctor Who hasn't really done that kind of thing before, with like life-size dolls coming to life in that way. Unless you're a toy maker, am I right? Oh yeah,
Autons are typically life-size dolls, I guess.
In a way. But yeah, I did really, really enjoy, the horror twist them in this way. I wouldn't say the Autons is quite as scary as this. Maybe a more subtle way. When they first start to move, Autons are quite creepy, but certainly these fuckers, I think I'd rather be running away from Autons than these. Yeah. So they're just horrible, really well designed. The people kind of performing as them and playing them, all their movements and stuff is just so well done and really well realized. And yeah, thanks. I hate it is essentially my thoughts on them, but I think they're a really great kind of one-off villain. Definitely one of the iconic kind of baddies that Series 6 has to offer, I would say.
Yeah, they are terrifying. It's just all of like just their voices, whatever, if they're speaking, the singing is gross. The way they're introduced, just silently stalking in the background, is terrible. It's just horrifying. I like it. I do like it. But yeah, it's. I'm glad I watched this in the middle of the day and not alone at night.
Yeah, I nearly watched this last night, and I was like, maybe not.
No. And I don't think this episode gets. It's called Night Terrors, so naturally you should expect it to be scary. But I don't think people necessarily remember it being scary. I certainly knew they were creepy, but I didn't.
Yeah, I feel like when it first aired, I think I remember saying, "Oh, I wish I was scared more by them." But I think this one is probably more like psychological horror, really, isn't it? That's what they're kind of going for.
There's no jump scares, which you associate with things like Weeping Angels and things like that, which is where most people get scared.
Yeah, more subtle. And I think it also maybe is balanced by the fact that a lot of the episode is actually quite funny as well. So I think you can kind of get through it in regards to that. If it was just like that sequence in the house, like for the whole episode, that probably would have been like, But yeah, I think they balance it out well with the humor as well.
Yeah, that's fair. So what's your third positive?
Let's have a look. Speaking of the humor, the comedy.
The humor.
Because again, this was another pleasant surprise this episode. It was particularly like the first 10 minutes and so where they're trying to find where George is. I just thought it was really surprisingly lighthearted and funny. I was just so focused on the dolls and that aspect of it. I was like, it's going to be like a creepy episode. But yeah, there is a lot of lightheartedness to it as well. Rory's face when the landlord guy opens the door and he's like, "Oh God, like this one. Why do I have to get this guy?" And we both wrote down the line like, "Oh, could be, but I'm not." And she was like, "You could be anyone." His delivery of that is pitch perfect. It's so good. And yeah, it's a really nice little light-hearted sequence before they're all cruelly dragged away into this dollhouse a bit later on, in various different horrifying ways. And yeah, then I think Alex and the Doctor, they bounce off each other quite comedically as well, and I think they have a lot of lightheartedness between them, which again I think really works. And yeah, it's just it's good to have a bit of lightheartedness to balance off the horrors. And I think that's something Doctor Who does often do very well. At the end of the day, it is a family show, so they kind of need to have episodes like that, and they balance it out a bit, or you're going to get people complaining like they did with Dark Water and the Don't Cremate Me thing.
Horrifying
weaklings. But yeah, I think this was a really good balance, especially when it's an episode about family and how that can mean different things to different people, how that's presented in different ways. It's probably good that it's not just like, this is a super scary episode, kids, you will not be able to watch this. So yeah, I really appreciated the use of humor balancing it out, but also the fact that it was mainly contained to the very beginning of the episode, and it doesn't then undercut everything that comes later on, especially when the end of the episode is also fucking creepy with them singing about the Doctor dying. So yeah, horrible, but I really enjoyed the comedic aspects. I think everyone did a great job with it.
Yeah, and even when the people are taken, there's some like dark humor elements to that with old lady
being Bernard.
Bernard not helping,
not caring at all.
Amy and Rory like falling down an elevator shaft or whatever.
He's like, oh, we died again.
Yeah, exactly. And even like the Doctor and Alex getting taken through the wardrobe, I think has some funny elements to it where they're trying to like not get taken away. Yeah. So I do think it does definitely balance itself out, which you don't necessarily get with other scary episodes, which is good. My final main positive is the sort of, I think I put set design down, but I guess I mean set and prop design. The way George's bedroom shrinks as he gets taken. I'd never noticed that before. And I hadn't noticed that either. Cool way they've done. I don't know how they've done that, whether it was a physical set where they pushed it in or if it was done with CGI or whatever. That's very good. A set
that was like, why is the wardrobe so close? Like, God, this poor kid's in such a tiny. No wonder he's miserable. No wonder he's scared of everything. He's claustrophobic.
And then it comes back with it being far away again. I was like, this is great. I like how they did that. Yeah. The big like fake lamp with the little light, I really liked. Alex using the big scissors, the big like crunchy scissors. I think all of that. I mean, you can say what you want about the generic flat housing estate, but when they get a bit more space to be outlandish with their set design and props, I think they really go to town with it. This one, obviously, the big dolls are another example of that, and I think they really do. It helps add in the sort of mystical, whimsical elements of Doctor Who in that element, with a shrinking room, Alice in Wonderland-esque with the big items and things like that. And I think it's done really well in what it is. The fake food that's on the table. And yeah, I really like that, because it's not often you get to sort of play around with things like that. There's, because it's effectively a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids situation, where they can oversize these items and make them look, ridiculously big. And Doctor Who hasn't done that really. A lot of the times in the context of a generic, home, and I think it was very, very well done, and I thought it deserved a little bit of a shout out.
Yeah, I really like. I just imagine the edit of when Amy opens the drawer and there's the glass eye in it. I just want an edit of there being like, Prisoner Zero has escaped. That's all I could think of. And I thought, I wonder if that was like a little.
It's just reused texture. They're like,
let's just put the eye in there. So
yeah. But yeah, it's all very good. I do like it, and the wooden copper pan. It's all great. So have you got any additional positives? I think you have at least one.
I do. I have quite a few actually. I mentioned earlier. I think just in terms of the character of the 11th Doctor, I think this is a really good episode for him. He's just, he's always very Doctor-y, obviously, but I do think he's very 11th Doctor-y in particular in this one. I think he's very well kind of characterized in it. Very quick to kind of work out where they are and what's happened a bit later on in the episode, when Amy and Rory have been trying to spend the whole episode working out what's going on. He gets there and he's like, it's this.
I did
it. And him, bouncing off with Alex, all of that. I loved the scene when he's like making all these toys move with his Sonic for George, and he's like tapping on the head, like, "Oh God, I'm not practiced at this in a while." It was very, very sweet and wholesome. There's just something about the Doctor kind of interacting with kids. And I think more so with knowing the 12th Doctor's coming and how he is with kids versus how 11 is. I just find it hilarious. And obviously we're going to get a bit more. I say one of the few good things about the Doctor, the Wizard, and the Wardrobe, but maybe that's going to surprise us now. Who knows?
Maybe. I don't think it will, but maybe.
That's not the attitude. We need to learn these lessons. But yeah, I thought it was a great episode for 11, as is often the case. I really like the direction by Richard Clarke in this. I don't think he's done one before or since this, sadly. But particularly like the shots when Amy and Rory first arrive in the dollhouse and they're like cased in shadow. You can just see like silhouettes of them. I thought that was really cool. I love the shot of Alex trying to get the Doctor to leave, and you just see them when he's making tea through like the hole in the wall, because like obviously a really old flat where they used to have a thing in there to move food about. I thought that was really cool. All of that direction was great. Amy and Rory, I really liked what they had to do. It's kind of a more light-hearted-esque kind of exploration for them as well. They could have joke around, and because they didn't really know what's going on. I loved Amy kind of like picking up the lamp and kind of holding on to that, going back for the wooden saucepan as well. having the either super brilliant or really stupid idea of being in control of letting them in. I mean, it didn't work out for
it worked for one of them. It was a 50.
It did 50%. Yeah, 50% successful. I guess that's not too bad.
Exactly.
And also, I thought it was a very wise move to have Amy, or at least one of them, be turned into one of the dolls. I thought that raised the stakes a bit. But...
Normally it would be Rory. Rory would be the one.
Yeah, that's what I also liked. Nice I liked that it was actually Amy who'd been kind of transformed there. And I think the fact that prior to that, I mean, I think, the old lady she's got to go. And obviously the landlord doesn't seem like a particularly nice guy. Up to that point, everyone who had been taken transformed, you don't necessarily feel bad about it. You're like, good, I like that. But I like that they kind of make it a bit more morally grey and questionable about everything that's kind of going on, and really raise the stakes when one of the companions is also turned into a doll. I think that's probably a very good choice to do that. So I think that just makes it even more horrifying that actually one of our heroes has now been turned into one of them. So I thought that was a good choice to have that happen as well. And then just a bit of music that I really liked as well in the scene where the Doctor's making all the toys move with the sonic screwdriver. The music's actually the Dolls song, just like a happier version of it. It's like, and it's horrible. I was like, I recognize that theme. Like, what is that? And then I thought about it. I was like, oh, it's the Dolls song without the lyrics. That's fucking disturbing. But it's like a happier version of it. So I thought that was a really nice kind of use, because obviously toys coming to life there is all happy, and then toys come to life in the doll's house, horrifying and creepy child voices. So that was a really nice bit of music usage as well that I picked up on. So yeah, a surprising amount to enjoy with this one.
Yeah, I think even the music when Alex goes down to George and like pushes past the dolls, I really like that as well. That's a nice piece of music. I didn't necessarily have too many other positives, although all the ones that you've mentioned are probably on my list, in my subconscious list. I thought this episode built tension very well, like especially when they were like, should we open the cupboard and stuff, and the way it sort of ramps it up, and the dolls behind, and you're like, what are they, who are they, what's going on? I think the tension built there was quite nice. And yeah, I think, as we sort of hinted at the start, I think George, the actor who played George, did a very good job. I think last week we were sort of like, oh, it's not going to be very good.
We were expecting it to be, but I absolutely take that back.
Yeah, 100%. I think he was like miles better than I had ever remembered or thought. Maybe we'd been clouded by Fear Her, and we'd been burnt too many times before thinking about children performances.
Now I'm rethinking, like, I've always disliked the boy in the Doctor the Wind in the Wardrobe. I wonder if that's going to change.
Maybe, but we'll see. Probably not, but we'll see. You never know. But to be fair, I think with that episode, with Night Terrors, I never like disliked the episode. I just thought, whatever. Whereas with Doctor Windrow and Wardrobe, it's like, I do not like this episode.
Yeah, I think it's even worse that it was on Christmas Day and you've waited.
Yes, for Christmas, it's the one episode, and you're like, yeah, it's that.
So maybe now we don't have to wait for. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe.
We talked about it for so long. It's weird that it's so close to actually we're going to cover that one. We've only got 10 episodes left of Damien Rory.
Oh my god, madness. So lots to be positive about in this episode. However, as per usual, we will talk about some of the negatives that we had this week. A lot of mine are nitpicky ones.
Yeah.
So what's your first one?
Okay, I mean, this could probably be in any order really. But I don't know how I feel about it, because I feel like it's set up but also not set up in regards to like what's going on with George and what it is and what is the deal with him. Maybe if they'd introduced the Doctor saying something's wrong with the photos a bit earlier than they did, because we do see him looking at them, but he doesn't say there's something wrong about these until like 5 minutes before it gets revealed anyway. But I kind of wish.
And they do a flashback.
They do a flashback, yeah. At least it was a lot earlier in the episode, so it wasn't like this happened in the same scene. So I was kind of okay with this one. But yeah, I wish. I don't know. I think the Doctor working everything out needs to be maybe a bit more of a moment. Is kind of how I'm kind of phrasing it. It's just like, oh, of course it must be this. This is the only option it can be. I'm like, really?
It came out of nowhere a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, I kind of wish there was just. I don't know how they would do it, but I wish it felt more like he had just like I had more pieces to the puzzle to work it out. I feel like he just did because there's 5 minutes left of the episode, and he's like, oh, he must be this obscure alien race at last. How did I not think of that before? When he didn't gain any new clues before he came to that realization, it's just because the episode was coming to an end. So I wish maybe there was more of a push to that reveal, but again, it's something I can live with.
Yeah, I think that's fair. For me, it did feel a bit like abrupt, like, oh, it must be this alien race. What if it's not? What if it's a different alien race that actually supplants its young and then it rises and kills everyone? What then, Doctor? Do you not want to scan him at least to check that you're right?
I also find it funny that he's a Tenza and then Tim Shaw's a Stenza. So they just put
so maybe they're the same. Maybe it's like a Clom Raxacoricophalopatorius situation.
Yeah, I imagine it is.
But yeah, so I mentioned mine was quite nitpicky. The first one, although the doll transformation was great, Matey Boy being absorbed by the carpet was terrible.
That's my third one.
I saw what you went, oh no.
I was like, oh, that's not aged well.
No.
Even like the ripple and like a ripple in the water, I was like, what was that?
It was very Mickey being eaten by Wheelie Bin CGI.
Yes.
It wasn't good. I mean, I don't know how else you could do it.
Nowadays, they could make that look amazing, but it really was like, oh yeah, this is 2011, all right.
Yeah, and because the way it just like comes up its shoe, you can just tell it's not very good.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can forgive it because again, they clearly spent their budget for effects on this one, on the transformation, which is where I would want it to go.
I think that kind of idea they definitely do a lot better in Knock Knock with that guy getting stuck with like the wooden wall.
Yes.
If they had the technology on the budget at the time. They put it into the transformation for the dolls, I think.
Yeah, and it's fair enough, I guess. Yeah, that's my first one. Again, quite nitpicky. Most are. But what's your second negative?
My second is this is more of like an I wish we could have gotten rather than I don't like this was absent thing. But part of me does wish we had Claire actually involved in the events as a mother's point of view in the story and how she'd react to the fact that, oh, this isn't your biological son, and her go through the same journey rather than the fact she's just completely oblivious to everything that's gone on by the end. She's like, oh, everything's fine after a day. Well, that's good, isn't it? And she probably just never knows the truth. And, I'd like to think she would just be accepting anyway, because that's the whole arc of the episode with, Alex. But I think it's a shame that she's just completely disregarded because she's absent for, all the episode. But maybe then the episode would have been too crowded, and maybe we couldn't have gotten quite as much good stuff with Alex, and maybe the Doctor's relationship with Claire couldn't have worked as well as it would with Alex. So it's not necessarily like a negative against the episode. It's just I wish maybe an alternate episode existed where we could have had a bit more of Claire's view of events, because I think that would have been interesting. But I am still okay with its absence.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that sort of ties in a little bit with my sort of next one, which is I thought that a lot of this episode seemed a bit derived of former episodes. So when I was watching the three stories that came to mind was The Lodger, Idiot's Lantern, and The Doctor Dances. I think all three of them have very similar themes to this episode, and that parts have been taken from this one, especially I can't really put it against this one, and maybe it's going to be a criticism for the one that's on the James Corden one coming up. I forgot what it's called.
Closing Time.
Closing Time. So maybe it's going to be a criticism of Closing Time that it's very similar to this one, because it is very similar to this one. It's effectively the same story. But I just thought that, when I was watching this, it's like, oh, this definitely reminds me of these three, and whether that's intentional or whether that's just because they're similar stories and similar.
Mark Gatiss did also write Idiot's Lantern, so maybe.
There you go. So it could be that maybe that's just maybe it could just be that maybe it's because of the theme they all.
It's a timeless theme.
Yes. And it's not a big deal. I don't think it's anything where I'm like, oh, I can't believe it reminds me of this one. Because again, every story has been told. There are no more new stories.
Is any show more self-referential than Doctor Who? I'm not sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think it's fine. It's not a big issue. It just reminded me of other ones, and at least one of those three is a very good episode. So that's something. None of them are bad episodes, but. So it's not too bad, but I think this is definitely one of the better ones of those themes that we've had so far. So what's your third negative?
Mine was yours for the landlord getting sucked in the floor.
Oh yes, CGI. So have you got any more?
Well, I just put a funny note. It's not really negative because it can't be helped, but you can definitely tell they had to reshoot the ending when they delayed the episode, because Matt Smith's hair is like twice as long in that last scene in the
TARDIS. Oh right.
I just found that very funny because he's obviously filming the finale at that point when he's got the longer hair and the beard. So I just thought that was a very funny thing, but that can't be how because they had to obviously delay the episode and changed it. So there you go.
Yeah, fair enough. My other one sort of is that I think the fears that George has, they're very valid fears. They're very valid things for a young boy to be scared of, and I think that the episode wants us to believe that they're not normal fears. A very loud crashing noise that happens every time the elevator goes. That's fair enough. I'm still scared of elevators to this day. If I can avoid getting in one, I will, because I do not like the sound.
I have been trapped in an elevator before when I was a kid.
Right.
For like an hour.
So it's a valid fear. Hearing a weird groaning noise and squeaking going past your window every day probably also is pretty scary for a child that doesn't know what that is. So I think that's pretty valid. A big burly man coming round and yelling at your dad, also a pretty valid fear. I would also be pretty worried if that was me. And then there's like clowns, old toys, whatever. I think he has very valid fears, and I think the episode's like, oh, look at this, these are weird fears for a child to have. Can you believe he's scared of these? And I'm like, yeah, I can believe that. If they were like more mundane, like he didn't like the lamp, or he didn't like the microwave, or something like that, something that was more, not scary and that couldn't be scary, like a stuffed bear or something like that, I think it would have been a bit more, okay, there is definitely a strange thing going on here, because that's a strange thing to be scared of. But because they all feel very much like, if he's scared of those dolls, fair enough, we're all scared of those dolls. It's fair. I think it's, and there's scissors in that doll's house, so you could say maybe he's scared of the weird scissors. I don't know how you'd fit that in the episode, but I think it just needed to be more normal mundane objects that he was scared of rather than rational fears. But maybe it's just because they wanted to play it off as he's not really, I don't know how they wanted to play it.
I think it's more of the quantity of them rather than actually what they are, because they need Alex to be overwhelmed and they need to show what they are, I guess.
Yeah, but I guess I just think they could have maybe just had more,
and they also need
more normal
like
things.
good scary things to
yes
actually use in the house, I guess.
Yeah, and I get it, and it's not a major thing, but all I was thinking at the start was like, yes, fair enough, that old lady walking by does sound pretty creepy. If I was in bed at night and I heard that go by my window, I would be like, the hell is that?
The only one for me was like, he doesn't like baths in case there's something under the water.
Yeah, I think that was like the only fail. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have bubbles, you can see everything, so it's fine. Don't worry about it. But yeah, like more things like that I think should have been on like a higher list, because then it makes more sense that okay, there is something different.
Then they just drown in the doll's house.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe, yeah.
Just like 13 was.
It's just a swimming pool. Yeah. Oh, but yeah, that's my only sort of other thing. You don't have any other additional negatives at that point?
No. I did struggle.
It's fair. I think the only one for me is I think the series arc reference at the end is a little bit forced for me, where it's like, oh, remember the doctor's gonna die, and I think that for me is the only bit where I'm like, yeah, we just had a whole episode about that. I don't need to be reminded about it straight away, but it's fine. I can look past it. It's only right at the end. I can send it off before then if I need to.
So the filthy casuals.
It literally is. So what fun facts do you have?
Fun facts. There are some. Not many, but some.
Oh my God.
So let's have a look. Working titles included House Call and What Are Little Boys Made Of?
Not that one. I do not like that one.
What are little boys made of?
No.
What are little boys made
I like
of?
House Call. House Call is fun.
House Call is good, yeah. I think they're both good titles, but I do like Night Terrace as well.
Yeah.
This, along with The Doctor's Wife, was the first story to be filmed for Series 6. So it took a long time for them to actually get it to air. One of the dolls was voiced by Sonny Ashbourne Serkis, son of Gollum himself, Andy Serkis. Isn't that nice? This was originally going to be the 4th episode of the series, but was pushed back to the second half as Stephen Moffat felt the first half was too dark. This is why scenes from the episode are featured in the Series 6 trailer, as a lot of it had already been filmed and edited. This necessitated several changes to be made. A scene of Madame Kavarian was removed, and the shot of the Doctor's date of death at the end was added. The Doctor's line at the end, "It's good to be all back together again in the flesh," was intended to have the added meaning of Amy being a ganger at the time. Yeah. So there you go.
Now it just sounds like he's taking the piss, like, oh, flesh. You were flesh. Your child was flesh.
Remember, your child was flesh twice.
Yeah, exactly.
Quite funny. The designs of the dolls were taken from old peg dolls that were made in Germany. Why would you make them Germany? Why did you do this? Daniel Mays was invited to guest star in the episode and accepted, as he was very drawn to the family element, having had a young son himself who reminded him of George, which is very sweet. The Doctor and Alex opening and closing the fridge door during their scene in the kitchen was improvised by Matt Smith and Daniel Mays on set, and they kept it in the final blocking. The Doctor was purposely made to emphasise his age throughout the episodes to thematically contrast the theme of childhood fears and the toy imagery. He always mentions his old eyes a lot, doesn't he? One of the stories the Doctor mentioned reading as a child, Snow White and the Seven Keys to Doomsday, can be read in the Doctor Who official annual 2012, published just before this story aired. Another version of it can be read in Time Lord Fairy Tales, if anyone has those books.
I like the Dalek, Emperor Dalek's New Clothes. I want to read that one. That's on I want.
That would be good, yeah. This was the first episode written by Mark Gatiss to not be set in the past. And then his next 3 are again set in the past. Benedict's Two not set in the past, so that's okay.
Oh, well, there you go.
And then finally, this is the first episode since Fear Her where there are no casualties. Hooray! Everybody lives.
Yeah.
Everybody lives.
Nice. There you go. There's another Dr. Dances reference for you.
Yeah.
It all ties together. Oh, lovely. Excellent fun facts. Very fun indeed. Last thing to do then this week. What are you rating this episode out of
10? I think I'm going to go 8.
Same. Wow. We have done 3 for 3.
That's it. 8.5.
Oh, amazing. Oh God, we're so lined up so far. What's going on?
Unbelievable. I don't like it. It unnerves me.
2023. What a year.
God, who knows? Everything changes.
But yes, that is it for Night Terrors. And now we look to next week's episode, The Girl Who Waited. Again, I think this is a very popular episode among the fan base.
It is.
What are your memories of this one? What are you expecting?
Pain.
Yep. Tears. The Macarena.
The Macarena. Oh. I'm expecting Karen Gillan and Alpha Darvel to probably be on my positives in the next one.
Yep.
The Doctor's the villain, which I love. We have those cool handbots, like Killing with Kindness and all of that jazz. Yeah, I'm really excited to revisit this one. Because again, right from the moment it aired, it kind of, became universally acclaimed. It's written by the guy who wrote the Cyberman 2-parter in Series 2. That's fun to get him back after all this time. And Tom McRae. And yeah, I am excited to revisit it, see how much of the visual elements hold up. I always remember them being like, oh wow, it's a really interesting kind of shot of this weird wacky garden thing, and how the old age makeup for Amy kind of holds up as well. I guess that'll be interesting to see. But I think the message of this episode and the story is really, really well done and realised. And I think all 3 of the main trio, again, on top of their game, are very focused.
4 of the main trio.
I guess so, technically. I guess. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really good kind of thing to revisit after so long, because it is held in high regard. I think it has been one of my favourites for a long time of Series 6. So yeah, it's going to be fun. I do remember a good chunk of it, and maybe not 45 minutes worth. So hopefully there'll be some surprises in exactly how they fill the time. But yeah, I am excited to check it out. I really like this little patch of Series 6, especially now that I know I really like Night Terrors as much as I do. So I really like the God Complex as well. So I'm excited about these next couple of weeks.
And I quite like Closing Time.
Yeah, I mean, Cybermen, so I'm definitely on board.
Yeah, exactly. And the return of the Cybermites, yeah.
And James Gordon.
And yes, cannot forget James Gordon.
He now has a child. Family. Oh my God. And they again disregard the mother for the whole episode.
Exactly. But yeah, I'm excited for next week. It's been a while since I've watched that one as well, so I'm hoping that there'll be things I can't remember. But yeah, as you mentioned, it is in high regard. And yeah, I got quite emotional at the end of this one, where
I did as well.
Where Alex runs down the stairs. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't expect to be crying at Night Terrors. What's going on?
What is 2023?
God knows how I'm going to react when it gets to the end of the episode next week.
I can already picture the scene where they're like, she put her hand on the TARDIS window, and he's
it's gonna be horrible. But hey, that's why we love the show. One week you can be all guns blazing, fun quips and all sorts, and then the next you can be crying. Just all kinds of fun. But yeah, so we should be back next weekend with The Girl Who Waited, bearing any major Doctor Who news. I don't think we really had too much.
Let's hope we don't keep them waiting any more than we need to.
No, yeah. But there is a Doctor Who magazine out between this going out and next week, so who knows? They could announce or reveal something. We'll wait and see. Could be an early Valentine's Day present for us all. Wouldn't that be nice?
Show us the beanie variant of the costume, you cowards.
Oh, that'll never come out. That won't even make it to the episode.
No, that's not actually shooty. Everyone's been lying because all the pictures are just so blurry for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know why. I saw that tweet. I was like, oh, everything of Billy Gibson's in HD, but everything of shooting so
the same bit that they're shooting. And
I don't know how to manage that. God.
Maybe Orange just can't focus cameras, and that's why they've given him Orange. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, so we should be back. We'll be back next week either way with a video. It just depends whether it's an episode review or some news. But yeah, that'll be it today. Bye-bye.
Bye.